So you and I have had a couple chances to talk about it as well, and I know you're as passionate about it as I am, but it's the ACL prevention side of things. Tell me kind of your path or your history with that, because I know for myself, it wasn't something that innately drove me to it, but then you just start seeing these rashes of injuries, and then you'd see your athletes go through them, and you saw the emotional toll it took on them, and that's when I know for me, I was like, we've got to get on the front end of this stuff. Kind of walk me down a little bit of that path that you've taken, and then some of the things, some of the strategies that you implement that you feel help your athletes.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of funny. I think everyone has experience with ACLs, whether it's an incoming athlete or whether, you know, it's unfortunate, but it happens within a sport. You know, I think my first exposure was really like, you know, taking over a team where there was a high incidence, and it was like, all right, you know, what are the things that they're currently doing? You know, are there gaps and maybe some of the holes that we're just not addressing performance-wise or stress-wise to get them better at those mechanics or to improve, you know, their deceleration rate. But, you know, the other thing with it was that, you know, there's so many different factors. You know, you look at, you could have a completely strong, healthy individual, strongest person on a team, and, you know, they're stable and mechanically they're sound, but there's still other issues and other factors that come into play. And so we started kind of like looking into it, and, you know, for us, and I say that because, you know, every staff member that we've ever had has always been kind of keen, obviously, on decreasing ACL incidents. But it, you know, it's creating opportunities. All right, you know, if we have somebody, you know, retroactively looking back on it, you know, what can we do to make those adjustments? You know, looking at a programming, I think, as a whole, and that's the hard part, is taking a step back sometimes and really looking, saying, all right, well, what's, you know, the ratio between unilateral and bilateral work that we're doing? What is, the, you know, are we including multi-plane you know, exercises? You know, are we getting outside of, you know, sagittal work and truly working into, you know, frontal and transverse plane movement? And then are we prepping athletes, you know, to handle deceleration within all of those different joint ranges of motion? You know, I think one of the biggest benefits of me was getting, you know, our other assistant who's now moving on to Maryland, getting him in. He was a Gary Gray fellow and had that experience with the applied functional science side. And I think he helped kind of take that knowledge base a little bit further. And so, you know, how to drive function across every joint, you know, whether it's isolated or, you know, three-dimensional and standing, is really kind of gotten, I think, a lot more advanced in how we kind of go through that process, or even some of the approaches that we're taking. But I think the biggest things that we look at now are, you know, one, looking at their foot, you know, their ankle. You know, does their ankle actually have the range of motion and articulations that it should, or is it completely locked up and leading higher levels of stress into other joints, like around your hip, your low back? And then looking at your pelvis. You know, is it an athlete who's stuck in anterior pelvic tilt and has, you know, inhibition in their glute, or, you know, some of those other issues that have underlying functional, really big impact across the entire kinetic chain.
Right.
And then it's, you know, training-wise, we expose them to the stress that they're going to see.
Right.
And I think that's where the gap sometimes happens, is, you know, we got to get outside of just one plane of motion and prep them for that.